The rain fell softly against the glass windows of St. Clair's Hospital, each droplet blurring the outside world into streaks of grey. Inside, under the cold white lights of the emergency wing, a man in a tailored suit sat motionless. His name was Ethan Cole, a name the city knew well, a tech entrepreneur, a billionaire before 30, a man who once thought he could control everything in life except fate. But tonight, as he waited outside room 214, his hands trembled, not from fear of loss, but from something deeper. The name on the patient file had shaken him. Lily Brooks. He hadn't heard that name in over 15 years. Yet it still carried the same weight, the same warmth that had once broken through the hunger and cold of his teenage years. Ethan closed his eyes, and the smell of rain transformed into the memory of fried noodles and damp cardboard, the night he met her. Before we dive deeper, tell me, where in the world are you watching from? It amazes me how far a single story can travel. Drop your city. Let's see how wide kindness still spreads. 15 years ago, Ethan wasn't the man in expensive suits or glossy interviews. He was just a boy, 17, half-starved, working double shifts at a car wash after school. His father had left years ago. His mother, sick with a chronic illness, could barely stand some days. Ethan's world was small, a cracked ceiling, an empty fridge, and a dream that one day, he'd never have to choose between food and medicine again. It was on one of those nights that he met her, a girl sitting alone by a bakery dumpster, hugging her knees to stay warm. Her hair was tangled, her cheeks smudged, and her eyes, though tired, had a spark that refused to die. Ethan had been heading home, counting the coins in his pocket, barely enough for one small meal. But when he saw her, something in him stopped. He hesitated at first, torn between hunger and heart. Then, almost instinctively, he turned back to the street vendor, bought 2 bowls of noodles, and offered one to her. The girl blinked in disbelief. "Are you sure?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "Yeah," Ethan said, handing it over with a half-smile. "You look like you need it more." They sat on the sidewalk, sharing food, laughter, and the soft warmth of kindness neither had felt in a long time. She told him her name was Lily, that she'd run away from foster care and was trying to survive on her own. He didn't judge, he just listened. For that one night, they weren't 2 broken kids. They were just Ethan and Lily, human, hopeful, hungry for something more than food. As dawn broke, she disappeared before he woke, leaving only her scarf behind, a faded pink thing that smelled faintly of soap and rain. Ethan never saw her again, but the memory of that night stayed with him, shaping everything he became. He worked harder, studied longer, and built his empire from scratch, always remembering the girl who had reminded him that even when you have nothing, you can still give something. Years passed. He climbed every mountain success offered, yet some nights, when the city lights dimmed, he'd find himself staring at that same old scarf kept safely in a drawer. He didn't know why he never threw it away. Maybe part of him hoped that kindness would find its way back, somehow. And now, sitting in the hospital waiting room, that hope had returned, along with fear. Because fate, it seemed, had finally circled back. Through the glass window, he could see the doctors rushing around her bed, her frail body barely moving beneath the sheets. The nurse looked up. "Mr. Cole, she's stable, for now. But she keeps asking for you." Ethan's heart sank. "Me?" "Yes," the nurse said softly. "She said, you once fed her when she was starving." He stood frozen, his mind spinning. Could it really be her? After all these years? He stepped closer to the glass, his reflection blurring into the pale face beyond it. A woman he had once known as a hungry, laughing girl beneath the streetlight. His throat tightened as the memories collided with the present. He didn't know what awaited him beyond that hospital door. But something told him, this wasn't just a reunion. It was a reckoning. And as he took his first step inside, the universe seemed to hold its breath. Ethan's shoes echoed faintly across the polished floor as he entered the dim hospital room. Machines hummed quietly, their steady rhythm filling the silence. Lily lay there, thinner than he remembered, her once lively eyes now framed by exhaustion and 4 lines. Yet, even through the haze of medication, She managed a weak smile when she saw him. "You came," she whispered. Ethan's throat tightened. "Of course I did." She tried to sit up, but pain flared across her face. He quickly moved closer, adjusting the pillow behind her. The gesture was gentle, instinctive, the kind of kindness that had once passed between two starving kids in the rain. For a long moment, neither spoke. The years between them stretched like a chasm, one built from silence, success, and the cruel hand of time. Finally, she said, "I saw your face on TV once. Couldn't believe it was the same boy who shared his food with me." He forced a smile, but guilt pressed on his chest. "I never forgot that night." Lily's eyes glistened. "Me neither. You saved me back then, Ethan." Her words sliced through the sterile air, wrapping him in memories he'd buried beneath ambition. He realized how strange it was, how a small act, given without expectation, could become someone's lifeline. If you were there in that moment, what would you have done? Be honest. Comment your answer below. And if words fail you, just hit like to prove that compassion still matters. Ethan sat by her bedside, studying the quiet details, the soft rise and fall of her chest, the faint tremor in her hand as she reached for his. He had seen suffering before, in business, in life, but this felt different. It was personal. "I tried to find you," he confessed. "After I made it. I even looked through shelters, hospitals. I thought maybe." She shook her head gently. "You couldn't have. I kept moving. Thought if I stayed still, the world would swallow me again." He swallowed hard. "You didn't deserve any of it." Her eyes softened, though a flicker of pain passed through them. "Life isn't fair, Ethan. But people like you make it a little less cruel." The nurse entered quietly, checking her vitals, jotting notes on a clipboard before leaving again. When the door closed, Lily turned her head slightly, her voice almost a whisper. "There's something I need to tell you. Something I should have told you years ago." His pulse quickened. "What is it?" But her eyes fluttered closed, exhaustion pulling her away before she could answer. The monitor beeped steadily beside her, a fragile rhythm of borrowed time. Ethan stayed through the night, watching over her, unable to leave. As the hours dragged on, he found himself lost in thought, not about his empire, not about money, but about that night long ago. The sound of rain, her laughter, the scarf she left behind. He remembered the promise he had made silently to himself, that if he ever had enough, he would make sure no one went hungry again. He had done it, in a way, built charities, funded programs. Yet none of it felt as real as this moment, sitting beside the very person who had taught him what kindness truly meant. When dawn arrived, a faint light spilled through the window, casting soft gold across the sterile room. Lily stirred, her lips trembling as if caught between dreams and memories. "You still wear that look," she murmured weakly. "What look?" "That mix of worry and hope." She smiled faintly. "You had it when you handed me that bowl of noodles." He chuckled softly. "Guess some things never change." Her gaze drifted toward the window. "I used to imagine what it'd be like to see you again. Not like this, though." Ethan hesitated, his voice quiet. "Then tell me how you imagined it." She exhaled slowly, her hand trembling in his. "I thought maybe one day I'd thank you properly. Tell you what that night meant to me." Her words carried a weight he couldn't quite understand. Not yet. There was something behind them, something unspoken, lingering in the shadows between confession and regret. He squeezed her hand gently, eyes fixed on hers. "You're here now. You can tell me everything when you're stronger." But Lily shook her head weakly. Some truths don't wait for strength. And before he could ask what she meant, the doctor entered briskly, flipping through charts, interrupting the fragile moment between them. Ethan rose, stepping aside, but his eyes never left hers. There was something haunting about the way she looked at him now, as if she knew something that would change him forever. The doctor cleared his throat, muttering to the nurse, "We'll need to run more tests, her condition's worsening." Ethan's heart thudded. He didn't know what was coming, but deep inside, a storm was beginning to stir, one that would soon turn his world upside down. And somewhere in that quiet hospital room, the past was preparing to speak. The morning dragged into noon, and the quiet hum of the hospital became a kind of rhythm that pulsed through Ethan's nerves. He sat in the corner, elbows on his knees, eyes fixed on the small window that framed a slice of the city skyline. His mind refused to rest. Fragments of Lily's words kept looping in his head. Some truths don't wait for strength. The doctor had asked him to wait outside for new test results, but every passing minute felt heavier, like time itself was holding its breath. When the door finally opened, Ethan stood quickly. Dr. Ramirez, a middle-aged man with gentle eyes, motioned him into the hallway. "Mr. Cole, she's stable for now. But her condition is complicated. We found something unexpected in her file." Ethan frowned. "What do you mean?" The doctor hesitated. "Her case history links to an older patient record, one with your mother's name." Ethan froze. "My mother?" Dr. Ramirez nodded slowly. "It might be a clerical overlap, but I'd like your consent to investigate further." His chest tightened. He hadn't heard his mother's name in years, not since she'd passed away quietly in a community hospital, long before his success. What could Lily possibly have to do with her? "I'll sign whatever you need," Ethan said, his voice low. The doctor handed him a form. "Thank you." "And Ethan," he paused, lowering his voice, "she's been asking for your forgiveness for something. Said you'd understand when you knew the truth." Ethan's pen slipped in his fingers. Forgiveness? For what? He signed the form anyway and returned to Lily's room, his thoughts a storm of confusion and fear. She was awake again, her eyes half open, watching the sunlight trace patterns on the ceiling. "You should rest," he said softly. She smiled weakly. "You were always the one telling me what I should do." He pulled a chair closer. "The doctor said you're getting more tests." Lily nodded slowly. "They'll tell you what I couldn't." "What do you mean?" he asked, leaning forward. She looked away. "Do you remember your mom, Ethan? How kind she was." He blinked. "Of course. She was everything good I ever knew." Lily's eyes filled with tears. "She saved me once, before you did." Ethan's heartbeat quickened. "What?" Lily took a shallow breath. "When I was a kid on the streets, sick and starving, your mom found me. She took me to a clinic, fed me, told me I mattered. But I was too scared to stay. I ran before she could finish helping me." He stared at her, the memory of his mother's quiet kindness crashing into him like a wave. "She never told me." "She wouldn't have," Lily whispered. "She didn't do it for thanks. She did it because she saw me, the same way you did later." Ethan felt his throat tighten, emotion pressing at the edges of his voice. "You knew her?" Lily nodded faintly. "And when I saw you that night years later, I recognized her eyes in yours. That's why I trusted you. That's why I never forgot." For a moment, the room blurred, the sound of the heart monitor steady against the silence. His mother had saved the girl he would one day save himself. The universe had been weaving their lives together long before he understood the pattern. Have you ever had someone help you when no one else would? Write yes and tell me their name. Maybe gratitude can travel further than we think. He sat quietly, absorbing every word, the weight of the connection between past and present sinking deep. Lily reached out weakly, her fingers brushing his wrist. "Your mom told me something once. She said, kindness always finds its way home. I didn't understand it back then. Now I do." Tears welled in Ethan's eyes. "She used to tell me the same thing when I was little. I thought she just meant it as comfort." "Maybe she knew more than she said," Lily murmured. The door opened again, the nurse returning to adjust the fall. Ethan stepped back, giving her space. The nurse smiled gently. "You're good for her," she said softly. "She talks about you even in her sleep." When she left, Lily closed her eyes again. "You shouldn't feel guilty for the past, Ethan. You did more than you know." He exhaled, leaning his head against the chair. "Then why does it still feel like I didn't do enough?" "Because your heart still remembers the hunger," she whispered, Not just for food, but for meaning. Her words struck something deep within him, a truth he hadn't dared to face. For years, he had built, achieved, conquered. Yet all of it had been an echo of that one night when a starving boy found purpose in giving. And now, as he sat beside the woman who had carried both his past and his mother's legacy, Ethan realized that fate didn't just bring people together. It circled back to heal what time had broken. But somewhere deep inside, he sensed this wasn't the end of her story, or his. There was still something she wasn't saying. Something that would soon change everything he thought he knew about that night long ago. The monitor beeped softly. Her breathing slowed, and her voice came faintly through the quiet. Ethan, there's more. You deserve to know, before it's too late. He leaned forward, gripping her hand. Then tell me, Lily, please. But her eyes fluttered again, caught between worlds, her lips forming silent words he couldn't yet hear. And just like that, the truth slipped back into the shadows, waiting for its moment to return. Outside, thunder rolled in the distance. The storm wasn't over yet. The thunder outside grew louder, rolling through the sky like the sound of a memory trying to be heard. Rain tapped softly against the hospital window as Ethan sat unmoving, his eyes locked on Lily's fragile form. The words she had almost said hung in the air between them, incomplete yet heavy, you deserve to know. Hours passed, the clock ticking louder than it should have. Nurses came and went, changing fours and whispering updates, but Ethan barely noticed. His mind was caught between two worlds, the one he built with steel and glass, and the one he left behind on a rainy street with a bowl of noodles and a promise unspoken. When Lily finally stirred again, it was evening. The room was bathed in a soft orange glow from the sunset beyond the blinds. She turned her head weakly, her lips trembling as she whispered, Ethan, there's something I did. Something I never told you. He leaned closer, gently brushing a strand of hair from her face. It's okay, he said. You don't have to. I have to, she interrupted softly. You deserve the truth. Her voice was fragile, but her words carried the weight of years. After that night, I kept the scarf you gave me. It reminded me that kindness still existed. I tried to survive, got a job at a diner, stayed clean, tried to go to school again. But life wasn't kind, Ethan. I got sick. I needed money for treatment. Ethan frowned. You should have reached out. I would have helped you. She smiled faintly. You didn't know me, and I didn't want your pity. So I made choices. Bad ones. One day, desperate, I went to your mother's clinic again. I didn't know she was dying too. Ethan's chest tightened. You saw her? Yes, Lily whispered. She recognized me instantly. She said she'd never stopped praying I'd find peace. She tried to help me again, but she didn't have much time left. Before she passed, she made me promise something. That I'd find you one day and remind you to forgive the world, no matter how much it hurt you. His throat burned. She said that. Lily nodded, tears sliding down her cheeks. I broke that promise, Ethan. I ran again. I was scared. But when I saw you years later, on TV, helping people, building charities, I realized you had become the man she believed you could be. Ethan couldn't speak. The room swayed with emotion too deep to name. Now it's your turn. Share one small good thing you did recently. Write it below so others remember that humanity still lives. Your story might light someone's path tonight. He stood up and turned toward the window, wiping his face with the back of his hand. The city lights shimmered through raindrops, and for a moment, he saw reflections of his younger self, hungry, lost, yet full of hope. Lily, he said finally, you didn't break anything. You kept her alive in a way I never could. You carried her words. Her lips curved into the faintest smile. Maybe, but there's still more you don't know. He turned back sharply. More. She hesitated, her breathing uneven. Ethan, before your mother passed, she gave me something to give you, something I've kept all these years. She motioned toward the small worn bag on the side table. Ethan reached for it with trembling hands. Inside, wrapped in tissue paper yellowed by time, was a folded letter. His name was written across it, in his mother's handwriting. The sight of it stole his breath. He traced the letters with his fingertips, memories flooding back, her soft voice, her laughter, the warmth of her hugs that had vanished too soon. He unfolded it slowly. The paper crackled with age. The first line read, "My dearest Ethan, if you're reading this, someone kind helped you find it. Remember this, love given freely never disappears. It circles the world and finds its way home." The words blurred as his tears fell, staining the paper like rain. He read the rest silently, each sentence carving through the walls he had built around his heart. His mother's letter wasn't about regrets or illness. It was about faith. Faith in goodness, faith in people, faith that kindness would always come full circle. When he looked up, Lily was watching him, eyes glassy, a faint smile trembling on her lips. She was right, wasn't she? He nodded slowly, unable to speak. She exhaled weakly, a whisper slipping through her lips. "Then maybe, I can rest now." Ethan reached for her hand, holding it tightly. "No, you'll rest when we fix this. When you're better." But deep inside, he knew, this wasn't a fight he could win with money or influence. This was fate, quietly reclaiming its balance. As the night deepened, Ethan sat by her side, reading the letter again and again, afraid to close his eyes. Each word felt like a heartbeat from the past, reminding him that the richest man is still just a son longing for one more day with his mother. Outside, the rain finally stopped. But inside, a new storm began to rise. One that would soon reveal the secret Lily still carried in her fragile, fading heart. The night nurse dimmed the lights, leaving only the faint blue glow of the monitors to paint the room in shades of quiet sorrow. Ethan sat motionless beside Lily, her breathing slow and shallow, her face pale beneath the fluorescent hum. In his hand, the letter from his mother trembled, a relic of love that somehow linked the past and the present into one fragile thread. He read the final line again and again. Kindness always finds its way home. It was a beautiful thought, but right now, home felt like a place he no longer understood. He looked at Lily, wondering what more she was holding inside. The way she'd said "before it's too late" echoed like a countdown. He wanted to ask, to press her for the truth, but the fear of hearing it kept his lips sealed. Some truths, he realized, change the way you see everything, even yourself. The door opened softly. Dr. Ramirez stepped in, his expression heavy. "Mr. Cole, there's something we found in the records." Ethan straightened, tension tightening his jaw. "What is it?" The doctor hesitated. "When we cross-referenced Lily's medical file, we found a note, one your mother added years ago. It said, 'If this girl ever returns, treat her as my own.'" Ethan's breath caught. "As her own?" Dr. Ramirez nodded. "There's more. Your mother had been sponsoring her anonymously for years, paying for her schooling, shelter, everything she could, until her illness made it impossible to continue." The words struck deep. Ethan sank back into the chair, his pulse thudding in his ears. "She never told me." "She didn't want praise," the doctor said gently. "She said she wanted to teach you that real giving doesn't announce itself." Ethan looked toward Lily, his vision blurring. His mother's love hadn't stopped when she died. It had lived on, quietly, through this girl he had once helped, through every act of kindness he had ever performed without realizing why it felt so familiar. If that moment hit you hard, leave a red heart hash. Sometimes one little symbol says what our hearts can't. Lily stirred, her voice faint but clear. "You know now, don't you?" Ethan turned to her, eyes glistening. "I know she never really left me. Not for a second." A small smile tugged at Lily's lips. "That's what I wanted you to see. You've been carrying her heart all along." He took her hand, feeling how cold it had become. "Then don't you dare leave me too." She shook her head slowly, a tear sliding down her cheek. "Ethan, I'm not leaving you. I'm just going where kindness started, and where it never ends." Her words fractured something inside him, not from pain, but from awe. The quiet kind of awe that comes when life shows its hidden symmetry. He wanted to tell her how much she mattered, how her courage had become his compass, how her presence had brought his mother's voice back to life. But all he could manage was a trembling whisper. "You kept your promise, Lily. You brought her back to me." A faint smile ghosted across her lips. "Then I can rest now." "No," he said firmly, gripping her hand tighter. "You'll rest when I finish what she started. I'll build something in both your names, something that feeds more than hunger." She closed her eyes briefly, her voice like wind over water. "Then promise me one thing. Anything. Don't let guilt be the only thing that drives you. Let love do it." He nodded, the weight of her words carving itself into his soul. The machines beeped steadily, but their rhythm felt fragile now, a reminder that moments like this don't last forever. Ethan leaned closer, his forehead resting lightly against her hand. "You changed everything, Lily. You showed me that kindness isn't a chapter, it's the whole story." She didn't answer, but her breathing steadied, soft and even. The nurse stepped in quietly to check the monitors, then whispered, "She's resting. She's peaceful." Ethan stayed there long after the nurse left, his mind flooded with memories. His mother's voice, the scarf in his drawer, the sound of rain the night he met a girl who had nothing but gave him everything. Outside, the storm had passed. The first rays of dawn crept through the blinds, painting the walls with gold. But deep down, Ethan knew, the real storm was yet to come. There was still a secret unspoken, and fate wasn't done weaving its final thread. Somewhere in the quiet hum of machines, truth waited for the right heartbeat to emerge. The hospital corridor stretched endlessly as Ethan walked aimlessly outside Lily's room, his hands buried in his pockets, his mind drowning in echoes. Her words replayed in fragments. "Don't let guilt drive you. Let love do it." He stopped near the vending machine, staring blankly at his reflection in the metal panel. For the first time in years, the man staring back didn't look like the billionaire who built empires. He looked like that teenage boy again, the one with rain-soaked shoes, holding a bowl of noodles for a stranger because it was the only thing he could give. He realized how much of his life had been shaped by that one small act. Not the hunger, not the success, but that choice to care when no one else did. A nurse passed by, whispering into her radio. Then another, this time rushing toward Lily's room. Ethan's heart dropped. He followed instantly, his pulse pounding with fear. When he reached the doorway, alarms were blaring. Nurses surrounded Lily's bed, their voices sharp but controlled. "We're losing her blood pressure," one shouted. "Get Dr. Ramirez." Ethan froze for a second, the world narrowing into a tunnel of sound. The monitor's rapid beeps, the rush of footsteps, the desperate urgency in every voice. He moved closer until one of the nurses blocked him gently. "Sir, you need to step back." He shook his head. "Please, I can't." "Sir." The nurse's tone snapped him back. He stepped aside, fists trembling, watching as they worked. Compressions, injections, the rhythmic dance between life and time. Every second stretched like an eternity. He could barely breathe. His mother's letter was still in his pocket, pressed against his chest like a heartbeat that wasn't his own. He whispered under his breath, "Don't take her too. Not her." Then, the monitor steadied. A single, precious tone. One nurse sighed with relief. "We've got her." The air in the room seemed to shift. The urgency softened into calm. Lily's eyes fluttered open weakly, and the first thing she did was look for him. Ethan stepped forward, gripping the railing of the bed. "Hey, you scared me." She smiled faintly. "I'm sorry." "Don't be," he whispered, brushing a tear from her cheek. "You're still here. That's all that matters." But her next words carried a quiet finality. "Ethan, if I don't make it." "Stop. Listen," she insisted, her voice breaking. "You need to know the rest." He hesitated, his throat burning. "Okay, I'm listening." She exhaled shakily. "When I got sick years ago, your mother wasn't the only one who helped me. There was someone else, someone who paid for my first surgery, someone who said they were repaying a debt owed to your family." Ethan frowned. "A debt?" She nodded. They said you'd understand one day. The name on the donation form was Cole Foundation, and that was years before you ever built your company. His mind reeled. That's impossible. The foundation didn't exist then. I know, she whispered. But your mother mentioned it before she passed. She said, he'll create it one day. And when he does, it will mean she found him again. He sank into the chair, disbelief mixing with awe. She saw the future. She saw your heart, Lily said softly. She knew what you'd become because she saw who you already were. The room fell silent again except for the steady hum of machines. Ethan took her hand, holding it against his heart. You've both carried me farther than I ever realized. Her gaze softened. Then carry it forward, Ethan. Don't let it stop here. Be honest. Could you forgive after what they did? Type forgive if you could, or never if it would break you too deeply. He nodded, his voice trembling. I'll carry it. I promise. She smiled faintly. Good. Because forgiveness, it's not weakness. It's the only way to let love live again. Ethan swallowed hard, feeling every word sink into his bones. For years, he had built walls, around pain, around guilt, thinking strength meant never breaking. But Lily, lying frail and fading, was showing him the opposite. True strength was soft, forgiving, and unbearably human. The doctor stepped in quietly, checking her pulse. She's stable for now, he said softly, glancing at Ethan. She fought hard. Ethan nodded without speaking. The doctor gave a small, knowing smile before leaving them alone again. Lily turned her gaze toward the window. The rain had stopped completely, replaced by a pale moonlight that filled the room with a fragile calm. It's beautiful, she whispered. Ethan followed her eyes. Yeah, it is. I used to think storms were the end of things, she said faintly. But now I think they're just how heaven makes room for new light. He smiled, a single tear sliding down his cheek. Then the light's coming, Lily. I promise. She squeezed his hand gently. You always did keep your promises. And for the first time that night, Ethan realized he wasn't afraid of losing anymore. Because in her, and in the memory of his mother, he had already found everything worth keeping. But outside the window, as the moon broke through the clouds, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that this night still had something left to give, or to take. The truth, he sensed, had one more breath to speak. The hospital fell into the stillness that comes only after midnight. That deep, fragile silence when the world feels suspended between yesterday and tomorrow. Ethan hadn't moved from Lily's side. The monitors glowed softly, casting faint reflections across the room. Outside, the city lights blinked like distant stars, unaware that in this one small corner of it, a lifetime of love and forgiveness was unfolding. Lily's breathing was steadier now, her hand still resting in his. Her skin felt cool, her pulse faint but there. Ethan kept his other hand in his pocket, holding the crumpled letter, as if his mother's words were keeping them both anchored to the world. For a while, neither of them spoke. Then, quietly, Lily said, Ethan, I used to watch your interviews on TV. You talked about changing lives, about giving back. I wanted to reach out so many times, but I thought you'd forgotten me. He shook his head immediately. I never could. You were the reason I started everything, the foundation, the schools, the meals. It was always about that night. A faint smile played on her lips. Then maybe, my story wasn't wasted. He leaned closer. No story is wasted if it teaches someone to love better. Her eyes shimmered with tears. You sound like your mother. Ethan smiled softly. I guess I finally learned how to listen. Lily took a trembling breath. There's one more thing I need to tell you. He tensed, his grip tightening around her hand. What is it? She hesitated, her voice fading to a whisper. The hospital, they said there's a chance, a transplant that could save me. But the donor list is long, and it's complicated. Ethan stood instantly. Then I'll fix it. I'll make calls, I'll. She shook her head weakly. You can't buy this one, Ethan. Not everything bends to money. It's life and fate. He sat down again, defeated, tears threatening to spill. Then what am I supposed to do? Just watch you fade away? Lily's eyes softened. No. You're supposed to live. Really live. For all the people who couldn't. He swallowed hard, shaking his head. That's not enough. It has to be, she said gently. Because love doesn't die when a heart stops. It keeps moving through the people it touched. Her voice trembled, but her words were strong enough to fill the silence. Promise me, Ethan. Promise you'll keep helping people. Not because you owe it, but because it's who you are. He nodded slowly, tears streaking his face. I promise. Lily smiled faintly, her eyes closing for a brief moment. Then you've already saved me once more. Ethan stayed quiet, listening to the rhythm of her breathing. Each inhale felt like a borrowed miracle. He wanted to freeze time, hold this moment forever. The peace, the forgiveness, the fragile beauty of it all. After what felt like hours, Lily's fingers twitched in his palm. Ethan, she whispered. Yes. She opened her eyes again, faint light flickering in them. Do you think kindness ever runs out? He smiled through his tears. No. It just changes shape. She nodded softly, a small tear slipping down her cheek. Then maybe, I'll just change shape too. He leaned forward, pressing her hand to his forehead. You'll always be here, he murmured. In every act, in every person I help. You'll never leave. The first hints of dawn began to creep through the blinds, a thin, golden light cutting through the room. Ethan looked at it, realizing what she meant earlier. Storms really do make room for new light. And for the first time since he'd walked into that hospital, he felt something other than fear. It was hope, quiet, steady, impossible hope. He looked at Lily, her face calm, her chest rising and falling gently. He whispered, You rest now. I'll take it from here. Her lips curved faintly, her last whisper carried between them like a promise. Then love wins again. If you believe love still wins, comment Amen. Let's fill this section with hope. Maybe someone scrolling right now needs to see it. Ethan stepped outside the room as the morning light grew stronger, spilling across the corridor. For a moment, he stood still, breathing in the sterile air, his chest aching with both grief and gratitude. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out his phone. There were hundreds of unread messages, calls, meetings, the endless noise of the empire he had built. But right now, none of it mattered. He opened his notes app and typed slowly. Project Lily, a hospital wing for children in need. Funded for life. Then below it, dedicated to my mother, Grace Cole, and to the girl who showed me that kindness never dies. He saved it, locking the screen, his hands trembling not from sadness but from purpose. Outside, the rain had cleared completely, and the city had that washed-clean glow that comes after a storm. Ethan looked up at the rising sun, his eyes reflecting its light. For the first time in years, he didn't feel alone. He felt connected, to Lily, to his mother, to everyone who had ever chosen love over despair. But as he turned back toward the room, a sudden alarm pierced the morning quiet, a single, sharp note that sent his heart crashing. He ran. Inside, the machines were screaming. The piercing alarm split the air like a blade. Ethan rushed into the room, his heart hammering against his ribs. Nurses surrounded Lily's bed again, their voices urgent, controlled but trembling at the edges. The monitor's flat tone held steady, long, endless, merciless. Lily! Ethan shouted, pushing forward. Lily, please. Dr. Ramirez turned toward him, eyes full of the kind of sorrow that needed no words. Mr. Cole, we're doing everything we can. Ethan's body moved before his mind could. He was at her bedside, gripping her hand, cold and small in his. Don't do this. Not now. You promised you'd see the light. The team worked in silence around him. Compressions, adrenaline, the familiar but brutal choreography of hope versus time. He whispered through tears, Come on, Lily, one more breath. Please. Minutes stretched. Then the monitor let out one final tone, sharp, infinite. Dr. Ramirez's voice came soft and hollow. Time of death, 6:47 a.m. The world stopped. The beeping silence was louder than any scream. Ethan stayed there, frozen. The doctor placed a hand on his shoulder, gentle, human, then quietly left the room. Nurses followed, closing the door softly behind them. Only Ethan and Lily remained. He sat beside her, his forehead pressed against the back of her hand. "You said love wins," he whispered, voice breaking. "So why does it feel like I lost everything again?" No answer came, only the faint hum of the machines cooling down. But then, something fell from beneath her pillow. A small envelope, crumpled, with his name written in shaky handwriting. He opened it slowly. Inside was a single folded page, her writing uneven but steady enough to break his heart all over again. "Ethan, if you're reading this, it means I couldn't say everything in time. But please, don't cry for me. You already gave me the happiest years of my life just by remembering me. You saved me once with food, and again with love. Promise me one last thing. Keep feeding the hungry. Not just with food, but with hope. Because there are millions of Lilies out there, waiting for someone to see them the way you saw me. You once gave a stranger your meal. I give you my faith. Keep it safe. Love always finds its way home. Lily." The words blurred through his tears. He pressed the letter against his chest, as if her heartbeat might echo through the paper. For a long time, he said nothing, only breathed, only remembered. Finally, he stood. The light pouring through the blinds had turned golden, painting Lily's still face with warmth, as if the sun itself refused to say goodbye. Ethan brushed a strand of hair from her forehead, whispered, "Thank you," and turned toward the window. Outside, the city had awakened. People hurried along sidewalks, cars honked distantly, the world spinning as it always did, unaware that something sacred had just ended, or perhaps begun anew. If this story moved you, don't scroll past quietly. Tap like, not for me, but for the soul who carried this pain and still stayed kind. One click can be your way of saying, "I felt you." Weeks later, a new hospital wing opened in the heart of the city. Bright, full of laughter, bearing two simple words above the entrance, Lily's promise. Ethan stood there that day, surrounded by children, nurses, and the hum of life. He held a small photograph, one of his mother smiling beside a teenage boy, both unaware that their kindness would ripple for decades. A reporter approached. "Mr. Cole, why name it Lily's Promise?" Ethan smiled softly, looking toward the sky. "Because promises kept in love never die." As the ceremony ended, a light rain began to fall, gentle, cleansing, familiar. Ethan tilted his face upward, feeling the drops cool against his skin. Somewhere deep inside, he could almost hear two voices, one soft and maternal, the other young and bright, both whispering the same words he had come to live by. Kindness always finds its way home. And in that moment, standing beneath the rain that started it all, Ethan knew, love had, indeed, won again.